welcome back to our Multiply series part 9. In the last session we learned about how God took Israel out of Egypt and out of slavery and took them on this amazing journey which we can read about in the book of Exodus. We continue that journey in this session today, and what is going on at this stage is the Israelites know God is on their side. They're remembering some of the amazing miracles he's done, like parting the Red Sea. However, they're starting to ask questions, and some of the questions they're asking is, okay, who are you, God, and who are we? They're starting to feel a little bit like, although we were in slavery in Egypt, we knew what was happening and we were safe. However, now we've come out of there, we've got no grid for who we even are anymore, or where we're going to go. Do you know? So they're starting to ask these questions, and God meets them and he answers these questions in quite an amazing way. What he does is, similarly to the character we heard about Abraham a couple of sessions ago, God makes a covenant with the leader of Israel, Moses, a covenant with him and a covenant with the people. So this encounter between God and the Israelites takes place in Mount Sinai. God speaks to Moses and says to him to tell the Israelites to consecrate themselves for 3 days before he'll come and be present with them. Okay, what does consecrate mean? It's kind of like a cleansing or a washing, trying to make ourselves right with God. Anyway, after these 3 days, God calls Moses to come up the mountain to speak to him, and this is where God makes his covenant with Moses and the Israelites. So just like God made a covenant with Abraham, God also makes a covenant with Moses and the Israelites. However, there is one difference. When God made a covenant with Abraham, Abraham didn't have to do anything for that covenant to be fulfilled. However, when God made a covenant with Moses and the Israelites, it was really based on obedience. God promises to bless the Israelites and make them a blessing to every nation. He gives them an identity of a treasured possession. However, he says that there's conditions to the covenant he's making, and that he wants Israelite to be able to live up to the laws that he gives. Okay, it starts off with the Ten Commandments. Maybe some of us are familiar with those, but it also goes on later on in Scripture to give over 100 laws. You'll read probably most of them in Leviticus. But what does God mean by giving them these laws? Really, God wants to show them his character through the laws, what his standards are, and also how they should behave with. Let's chat a little bit more about law. Okay, so far we've said that law shows us who God is and how we've to behave. Okay, so really what that tells me is that when God created the law, the reason he did it is he wants to answer the question of how can a holy God have relationship with a sinful people like us. Think about it. For a relationship to happen, we need to know about the person and we need to know how we can behave. And that's God's heart and desire all the time, is to have a relationship with his people. What God definitely didn't intend the law to be was to give us a standard that we work our way to be loved by him and to reach heaven. And so far we've got that wrong. But actually, when we think about it, when God created the law, he also created a system where we failed to live up to the law, which he knew we were going to do. He made a system in the Old Testament where people would do maybe sacrifices, animal sacrifices and rituals and all these things that, my goodness, thank goodness we don't have to do today. But you know, he knew that they were not going to manage it, and we still don't manage to live up to the standards that were set in the law. My goodness, I'm so thankful that we live in a time that we're no longer under this covenant that God made with Moses and the Israelites, but rather we live under a new covenant that was paid for by Jesus Christ dying on a cross, where he was the sacrifice, and where he took all the sin. And now the covenant we live under with Jesus isn't dependent so much on our behaviour, but it's dependent on our faith in Jesus Christ. That to finish off today's session, we're going to close by just talking about two things. Okay, here's two things that, although we know Israel didn't live up to the law and they made mistake after mistake, here's two things that God called them. He called them a holy nation and a royal priesthood. Okay, a holy nation and a royal priesthood. Let's finish off this morning in our group by chatting about what that meant for Israel back then and what that means for us today.